Your phone here is a reason why 95% of people will not change their lives. Actually, it's not just your phone, it's your TV, your video games, and then everything else that artificially stimulates your brain. These technologies were intentionally designed by the richest companies in the world to be as addictive as possible. Shorts, Reels, and TikToks are basically slot machines for content. Think of the person at a pub who spends hours every single day pulling a lever and putting hundreds of dollars worth of coins through the pokies. What's their life like? Well, that's you, us. Our entire generation has been sedated. What we have seen in the last decade or so is generational sedation. At the surface, everything seems pretty harmless. Like surely a couple hours here and a couple hours there can't do that much harm. But wasting time is actually the least of your worries. Because you're not just wasting time. It's far worse than that. Your drive has been taken away. Your passions have been subdued. And if you keep this up the way you're going, you'll never find purpose in your life. A sedated brain that cannot produce drive, find passion, or create purpose is a brain that is going to be tricked into being a consumer for the rest of their life. And it's also the people with actual power can make endless profits. They have stole your future for profits. You know something is up when Zuckerberg won't even let his own children onto his platforms. And it's not just Zuck either. Steve Jobs didn't let his children use an iPad when they're at home. One of the founders of Twitter, Evan Williams, gave his children books instead of tablets. So these really successful, hyper-successful people knew that technology can be harmful to the brain. So most people will think, okay, I just need to eliminate all the distractions and then I'll be fine. Some people can, but most can't. Because there are deep-seated reasons why you do what you do. The truth is, trying to feign monk-like discipline just won't work for most people. Because you need to address the actual reasons why you do what you do. And when you do that, you will unlock something that makes you unstoppable and you'll never have these problems again. By the way, if you're new here, I'm Josh. I'm a research and development engineer, and I've been studying human potential for over 7 years. And this is what I've learned. Screens and sleep. The average person now spends as much time on their screens as they do asleep. Recent studies show us that the average daily screen time is around 6 to 9 hours, depending on the individual's age, sex, lifestyle, and location. While the average hours they are asleep is between 6 and 7 hours. The image is pretty clear. We are on our phones and technology way more than we want to be, and we are getting less sleep than we want to as well. According to Matt Walker, the author of the bestseller Why We Sleep, sleep is a single greatest legal performance enhancer that we all neglect. Most people are trading sleep for their phones. No shame, we all do this, don't pretend that you don't. And we're not just talking about sleep here either, we're neglecting rest as a whole. Most people's definition of rest is completely wrong. They believe that rest is plopping yourself on the couch and putting yourself in a comatose state while watching TV. Some people, part of my generation, even say, I just need to rot with TikTok for a little bit. That's how far this has come. Because we've gotten to the stage now where we're using language and words like rot to describe our resting habits. But this isn't rest. Not at all. For your brain to truly rest and reset, it needs to shift into alpha waves. The feeling of being relaxed yet awake. Activities like video games, TV, and fast-paced online videos pull you out of this state and instead shifts you into beta brainwaves. Beta brainwaves are responsible for feelings of wakefulness and alertness. If you ever have played the content slot machine late at night and you felt tired but still wired, well, this is why. The constant stimulation that we keep bombarding our brains with is literally preventing our brains from switching off. There are so many benefits to allowing our brains to shift into alpha waves. Better relaxation, reduce stress, better focus, increase overall mental well-being, and most importantly for us, enhanced creativity. Creativity is the opposite of sedation. A sedated brain cannot think for itself, but a creative brain can. However, there is a really big problem. These technologies have become very intertwined with our daily habits, and the developers have done this really intentionally by manipulating certain psychological triggers. You are a puppet, and they are the ones that's pulling the strings. What makes it so much worse is that you're not even aware of what's happening. because they're giving your brain what it wants, or at least what it thinks it wants. Over time, this literally changes the mapping of your brain. Scrolling on your phone, watching TVs, comatose on the couch, and playing video games have become so frictionless and effortless that it feels like you have no control. So if you want to reclaim control over your life and actually make some changes here, then you need to go into the programming of your brain. But be warned, this isn't for the faint-hearted. Constrain and release. Isaac Newton discovered the 3 laws of motion, with the most famous one being, of course, every action has an equal and opposite reaction. The force of gravity is driving you to the center of the earth, but the ground pushes you back towards the sky. They are equal and opposite, so you remain still. Have you ever noticed that the more you try to resist something, the more likely you are to give in? It might not be today or tomorrow, but next week or next month? Likely. Resistance never works because force always comes in pairs. Jordan Peterson said a line years ago that has just stuck with me since then. We hate tyranny so much that we cannot even be tyrants to ourselves. That's paraphrased, but you get the idea. Tyranny usually looks like ordered chaos. It's a force of oppression that usually results in destruction. Force always comes in pairs. The second law of thermodynamics states that ordered states will always trend to disorder. Entropy is always increasing. Energy is always dissipating. That is a universal law. Your natural state is disorder. Your brain craves dopamine from novelty that's found in chaos. Dostoevsky wrote in Underground, "It is our unique proclivity for destructive decisions that make us human. And we wouldn't give that up for anything, even heaven on earth. Trying to feign monk-like discipline just won't work because we cannot be tyrants to ourselves. And destruction is always the end state of unchecked entropy. However, entropy can be transmuted. You can take back control of your life, but you need to find the really delicate balance between constraining entropy and releasing entropy. There isn't an invention more symbolic of freedom than your car. I'm a chemical engineer, and so I really love nerding out with these type of things, so bear with me here. The engine of a car works by burning fuel in the cylinders. There's a compression stage where the gas in the cylinder is constrained to a small volume. Energy is more closely packed together and becomes more usable. At the peak compression, energy is released, driving the piston upwards. The gas expands and entropy is released. An engine finds the difficult balance between constraining and releasing entropy. The two stages collapse into one thermodynamic cycle that drives your car to where you want to go. The point here is to highlight that you need habits to constrain entropy, that is, being productive, and also habits to release entropy. Constrain too strictly for too long, and the cylinder ruptures. Release too far for too long, and the energy is lost, and the next compression is compromised. When you hit the balance, the habits collapse effortlessly into a daily routine that keeps you moving towards your goal. This is not easy to do, not by any means. And I personally really find the release of entropy to be very hard to manage. Tightly constrained workdays often result in an uncontrolled release of late nights, entertainment, and high stimulation. In the moment, indulging in that release really feels like it's what you want, but it really is. Simply trying to remove the release altogether doesn't work because tyranny doesn't work. Force always happens in pairs. So the only real option is to learn how to control the release. But why is that so goddamn hard in the modern world? And to answer that, we need to talk about diet. Fats and sugars. We now live in a world where more people die from overeating than undereating. Currently, 1 in 8 people are obese, while 1 in 6 are underweight. More people suffer from malnutrition because of overeating than undereating. Considering that humanity has lived in famine for almost our entire history, this is fan-fucking-tastic news. So what's going on here? Why are we becoming so fat? Well, I'm writing a letter about nutrition, so you need to wait for that, but let's just get to the point. Our supply of food has become so abundant and robust that we can eat as much as we want. And I don't think availability is the leading cause. I know a lot of people don't want to hear this, but it's true. It's thermodynamically true. You put on weight when the calories going into your body is higher than the calories coming out of your body. It's simply just an energy balance. When I first learned energy balances at university, we always black box the process. So imagine the human body is a black box. What happens inside the human body doesn't really matter. All that matters is just the energy going in, so the food that you eat, and then the energy going out. And if the in is higher than the out, you put on weight. If the in is lower than the amount, you lose weight. That's how it works. So sorry to tell you, you are not fat because you somehow broke physics. Western diets overload people with unexpected calories. One trip to McDonald's can exceed your total daily calorie budget, yet you can still feel like you haven't eaten anything at all. Highly processed foods are designed to be extremely calorie dense, and they are also packed with sugar and fat, making them delicious and addicting. To understand why, we have to understand where the human brain evolved from. For most of human history, food was really scarce and quite basic. Meat, fruit, some vegetables like tubers, and in some places, rice, wheat became main staples in diets. The scarcity problem had a couple effects. When food was available, they had to make sure they got the most of it. Overeating wasn't really an issue though, because it could be days before they ate again. So this meant getting calories in was priority number one. So foods high in calories, that is, foods high in sugars and fats, were extremely pleasurable. It causes the reward circuit of the brain to light up and to seek those foods next time. The point is, your brain was quite literally sculpted for survival, not optimal health. Pizza, burgers, Oreos, all that really delicious junk food lights up our brain in basically the identical way that a fatty chunk of meat would light up the brains of our ancestors. The junk food is hijacking the reward circuit of the brain, and it's giving you cheap dopamine. Stimulation from technology provides the same cheap dopamine. Phones, video games, porn, social media, like Big Macs, large Cokes, and pepperoni pizzas, are designed to hijack your reward system. They are simply giving you what your brain wants. And this, rather counterintuitively, is pretty great news, because this means that it's not you as an individual, but instead it's the programming of your brain. Dissociating yourself from your brain's programming is one of the most powerful concepts in Buddhist philosophy. It lifts a lot of the emotional weight from what you see as poor decisions or a lack of self-control. Your brain has evolved over hundreds of thousands of years to pursue and select these things. Like seriously, there's absolutely no reason to shame yourself because you struggle with this. It'd be fucking weird if you didn't. It's programmed like a computer executing the code to keep you alive. If you're not aware of what the code is doing, it's extremely difficult to edit it to do something else instead. So the question is, how do you edit the code? Information and triggers. The conscious mind can process up to 50 bits of information per second. The conscious mind processes 1 million times that. Some experts estimate that 95% of your decision making occurs in the subconscious. I really want you to consider what this means. It means that almost all of the decisions that you make happen unknowingly. And this is why self-control can be so elusive, and it can feel like we don't have control over the decisions that we make because we don't have the awareness of them. The West has studied and used science to uncover how the mind works. It is useful knowledge to have, but the science is based on the average of thousands of minds, and that can be a problem. However, the East took a different approach. Instead of asking, how does the mind work? They asked, how does my mind work? Nir Eyal, sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, he wrote a best-selling book called Hooked. And it's all about trying to make your product as addictive as possible by making it a part of the user's habits. In the book, Nir states that 90% of all your habits occur from internal triggers, and the remaining 10% are, of course, external triggers. So we really shouldn't be so surprised that people use foods high in fats and sugar for emotional regulation when it is in the source code. We've all sat on the couch with a tub of Ben & Jerry's in our hand after a stressful day. Because the ice cream is so high in fats and sugars, when we eat it, our body produces serotonin. And that makes us feel like stress is being replaced with comfort. The first craving that you feel to have the tub of ice cream is dopamine. And then you get a second hit of dopamine after the fact. Because if the experience was better than your expectations, that is, you feel comforted, you feel more relaxed because of the production of serotonin, you get another hit of dopamine and that reinforces the behavior. It essentially forces this event to be stored in long-term memory, so you come back and you do it again. That, my friends, is basically the rundown of how habits are formed. For example, video games have the tendency to hook young boys and men. And I think the reason why is quite simple. They provide an alternative world where they are the main character and they have missions to complete. And those missions gives the character a sense of purpose because it's usually in alignment of a greater story. You have missions to complete, obstacles to overcome, and a character to properly develop. I think most of us get to the age where video games just become less interesting because we have missions that we want to complete in our own lives. But for argument's sake, let's say you don't. And you learn that the only place that you get a sense of purpose and accomplishment is in this virtual world where you're playing a character. So that's exactly where you're going to seek it out from. The reason why dissociating yourself from the programming of your brain is so powerful is because the negative emotion you feel about the thing is a trigger itself. The shame you feel about your insufficiencies is a trigger for your insufficiencies. And most people just won't raise their awareness of the code enough to edit it and do anything about it. With higher awareness, you begin to notice the patterns of your pitfalls. You see your triggers. You see how these products have become part of your habits and how they hijack your reward system. You realize the feelings you are trying to avoid. You notice how you release entropy. You might even discover that you enjoy your pitfalls because your brain craves novelty. And you will see that you cannot be a tyrant with yourself. With awareness of your problems comes a strategy to actually do something about it. So how do you raise your awareness? Well, that brings us back where we started. Distractions and boredom. The reason why 95% of people will never take control of their lives and actually make changes is because they never allow themselves to be bored. Your phone has become the most addicting product that you own because it has done something that no other product has. It's able to fill any empty time you have with yourself because you carry this damn thing around wherever you go. You sleep 1 meter away from it. It's on you at all times of the day. You go to toilet with it. If it was perfectly waterproof, you'd probably take it into the shower with you as well. How many times have you been working or studying, got distracted and reached for your phone, and then lost 30 or so minutes? How many hours have you lost by scrolling your phone in between sets to the gym? How many times have you extended a 3-minute poo to over 10 minutes? And it's not just that you're losing time either. There's an opportunity cost at stake here. There is nothing special about shower thoughts. It's the only moment of the day where your conscious mind, which processes about 50 bits of information per second, is not fully occupied. This gives you the space for what has been bubbling in the subconscious to crack through the surface. A productivity hack that a lot of people like to use is the Pomodoro method, where you work for a little bit and then you rest for a little bit and then you go back to work. And the reason why this works is because the work that you did doesn't actually stop when you go take a break. The subconscious mind is still churning through the information that you're working on, but in the background. And during those breaks, you may have insights into your work that you wouldn't have had otherwise. I remember when I was at university and I was working on this really challenging thermodynamic problem. I spent days working on this thing and I couldn't quite work it out. But then I went to work at the retail shop and I was packing up some boxes and then bang, I had the idea and then went home that night and the problem was solved. Your conscious mind is just the tip of the iceberg, but you have no understanding of what level of depth lies beneath the surface. We all get distracted, but back in the past, before we had all of these distracting technologies, when we lost our focus on the task we were working on, we would just let our mind wander wherever it wanted to go, and then within a few minutes, it would naturally come back to the task at hand. But because this thing is right next to you, and because it's become such a part of your habits, You'll open it up and you'll go on TikTok or Instagram and you'll scroll for a bit and then you will lose 30, 1 hour, 2 hours worth of time. We actually don't want to stop the mind wandering because mind wandering is a part of creativity. It's a feature of creativity. The reason why we struggle to properly rest is often because we can't stand boredom anymore. We've completely lost the ability to be with ourselves. There are so many ways to entertain, stimulate, and distract ourselves nowadays. You'll never take control of your life and actually make changes until you enter the source code of your psychological triggers. You will never determine your psychological triggers until you raise your awareness. And you will never have the insight into yourself to raise your awareness until you rest. And you will never rest until you are bored. But once you can ride boredom without escape, you will take control of your life and you won't be pulled into these distractions. The answer you're looking for will be found in the silence you're avoiding. And that's all for today, my friends. Thank you so much for being here. If you want to check out the written version of these ideas, find my newsletter in the description below. But for now, appreciate you and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.